It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. Good morning again, everyone. So think about the last thing you posted. Maybe a photo dump from a vacation, a birthday tribute, a graduation. You probably gave at least a little thought to the caption, right? What to include, what to leave out, how it would land. Most of us have been doing some version of this for 20 years now, if you're that old, and yet we almost never talk about it. My next guest spent years asking strangers all over the country about their posting habits, and many told her they had never once discussed them out loud. But her argument goes further than how we post. She says social media has changed not just our attention spans or how isolated people sometimes feel or the way we get our news. We're always talking about those things. But also how we vacation, how we celebrate, how we parent, and how we tell the stories of our own lives. So with me now is Catherine Jeser Morton. You may know her best as a parenting columnist for New York Magazine. Her really interesting column in New York Magazine's The Cut called Brooding. Now she's got a book called The Story of Your Life, How Social Media Shapes the Way We Experience Everything. Hey, Catherine, welcome back to WNYC.
Thank you so much, Brian.
So right to that word experience in your subtitle, not just how we tell the stories, but how we experience our lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I found in my conversations with people is that, you know, we see these stories when we're scrolling, and it influences the way that we then kind of reflect back on our own experiences and then the types of experiences that we want to have and that we seek out because we're thinking, well, I want to replicate this thing that, you know, I saw on social media, for example.
Listeners, maybe you lived, if you're old enough, at a time before social media or before social media was ubiquitous, and you've seen a change in how you experience things in your life compared to before you started posting about them. If anybody has a story like that, call in and tell it, or you can call in with anything relevant and ask a question for Catherine Jeser Morton, her new book, The Story of Your Life, How Social Media Shapes the Way We Experience Everything. 212-433 WNYC, 212-433-9692. Call, or you can text, of course, as well. I'm going to ask you to talk about kind of what would we call it, a prelude or the prequel to this book that you reveal, because long before you even had a Facebook account, you were writing in collective journals on your Vermont commune. Everyone's lives recorded in one shared book in the kitchen. You lived on a commune?
Yeah, my dad and his friends founded a commune in the late 60s, and that's where I spent, you know, a big part of my childhood. And yeah, we had these notebooks that would be just out on the coffee table or on the counter, and people would write in them whatever they wanted. And it was really, I loved that. And I was a kid, I was in 5th, 6th grade, and I just loved reading everyone's little entries, and then, you know, you could comment on people's entries, and then they might come back and reply to you. It was like a sort of a proto-social media technology.
Was that, in a way, your first social media feed?
I would say that it was, you know, looking back, and I really took to it. Like, I just loved it. I think a lot of people, when they started using social media, when it became kind of widespread in the early 2000s, it was really fun. And I remember finding it just super, I wanted to do it. I wanted to participate.
Do you feel differently today, just with respect to your own life?
I do. Yeah. I still use it all the time, but I'm a lot more ambivalent about it. And I would not say that I find it fun. No.
Well, you do call social media your hobby. And, you know, most of us probably don't think of our use of social media that way. Hobbies are knitting or playing badminton. I don't know. Why do you call it a hobby?
I call it a hobby because we've been doing it for so long and for so many hours that you just develop an expertise in it, I think. And this is one of the things that I found in talking to people, is that people have a lot of very nuanced opinions and kind of practices and ways of looking at it that are developed over years, and they don't necessarily think of it as expertise. But anything that you're doing for this many hours, you develop a set of practices that constitutes a kind of expertise.
You trace a turn somewhere around 2013 when people started narrating their lives like small companies reporting to shareholders, you say. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I noticed that people started kind of making statements. It started a little bit around politics. You know, there was a terrorist attack in Boston. This is when I first remember noticing this, the marathon bombing. And I noticed friends of mine who were just ordinary people kind of posting like, I condemn all acts of violence of this nature. And I thought to myself, are these folks running for office? Like, what is this press release type of language? And this kind of press release type of language began migrating, everywhere to announcements of, life events, and we just started having this kind of formal way of presenting ourselves. And it was really this message of, you guys, here I am. I'm competent. I'm in control. My life is going well. And here's the proof in my photos and in my posts.
So to play devil's advocate on that for just a sec, haven't humans always curated, so to say, yourself? So like before social media, families would send out Christmas cards with a carefully selected photo of the kids and carefully selected stories about, what the parents and the kids were doing that year and what baby names they chose for you as a parenting columnist, all those kinds of things.
Absolutely. And that's a very kind of it's a good analog, the Christmas card, the brag rag. Here are all the great things we did this year. And we have always done this, but a Christmas card is a once annual piece of media. It's one piece of paper that you send out every year. And social media in a way it's like the Christmas cardification of your entire year. And it's like every day is an opportunity to send the Christmas card. And I think that is where you start to see an impact in terms of how people are seeing what life, should look like or should feel like, is that it's always this kind of, it's a pitch letter about, what's awesome about you.
Are you surprised that our phone lines are really lighting up a lot? And
Oh, good.
We're getting a lot of texts on this topic and phone calls from such as Andrew on Staten Island. Andrew, you're on WNYC. Thanks a lot for calling in.
Hi. Glad to have you back, Brian. You were gone all week last week. I was like, what the heck?
Hey, I get to take a week off in July.
But I just wanted
glad
to
you're
say
glad.
that...
Go ahead.
Well, I listen to you all the time. Whatever. I just wanted to say that I'm 22, so I grew up with social media. And I found that, it's not even just the posting, but it's like every app you open it and now there's immediate short form content. So like forget about even your own life. Like you don't even have time for any thoughts because you're just scrolling aimlessly. And I found that amongst my friends where there's just this resurgence of going back to physical memories of, Polaroids or doing these like just taking pictures outside of online, keeping them for yourself, and I find also that it's like wearing sunglasses and then you wonder, am I going to keep this memory through the lens of the glasses or through my actual eyes, through the stat vision? I don't know if that makes sense.
What an interesting analogy. Catherine, do you want to talk to Andrew at all? He's got interesting takes here on your subject.
Yeah, Andrew, and you said you were 22. And I think, younger folks, I'm a millennial, so I'm older, and I really wrote from the perspective of my generation, which I think, we really embraced this technology when we were kind of in college. And I have noticed that younger people are really kind of leading the charge towards something different. And I think I really admire that. I have a lot of hopefulness around the next technology of storytelling that we're going to adopt. And I think it's going to come from younger people. And I think it's going to be maybe something that feels quite different.
Andrew, one more go after having heard that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's like, as I'm getting older, I'm thinking, man, if I have children, how am I going to handle their progression on social media? Because you were at it during its genesis, so it wasn't as oversaturated, it wasn't as dominant in your life. But for us, even for kids a little younger than me, maybe my 16-year-old cousins or something, social media is their entire life. Like, they don't even socialize in the real world at times. They are on social media. So, yeah, I don't know. It's honestly really sad.
Andrew, thank you so much. Keep calling us. We really appreciate you being out there. And Catherine, I mean, he mentioned at the beginning of his call kind of backlash, if you want to call it that, where, young adults really are drifting. I mean, he really mentioned both things, right? One is that social media is so ubiquitous that there are a lot of young people who don't have a lot of in real life experiences of other people. And at the same time that there's a trend to go back and touch grass, right? As they say, do things in the real world. Because a lot of people around, his age 22 realize that they've been growing up this way. And after a while, it's just not satisfying.
Yeah. And I think, in time, I think the backlash is going to bring about something new. But even right now, like sometimes I'll be at a dinner or at a gathering and there's this kind of spirit of, let's not take any pictures of this. This is never going to live. No one's posting about this. And so we don't. But even doing that, still, it's like we have the audience in the room with us. And so even though we're abstaining from it, we're still kind of under the influence of, we feel as though we're withholding information. Like, it's inside of us. And so, I think it's very profound the way that we feel this technology in our daily lives.
We have a few more minutes with Catherine Jeser Morton, New York Magazine parenting columnist. Her column in The Cut that you may know is called Brooding. Now she's got a book called The Story of Your Life, How Social Media Shapes the Way We Experience Everything. And Ethan in Long Island City are on WNYC. Hi, Ethan.
Hey, Brian. Thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
What's
my observation. So I'm approaching my 60th birthday, and I've been very active in the street dance culture for decades. I grew up in the Bronx, and a lot of kids way back in the 70s, we were just dancing on the street. These days, with a lot of kids, especially I think the advent of TikTok and also Instagram, a lot of kids these days, as they come into the dance community, they post their dance videos, and in those dance videos, it's a very two-dimensional perspective. It's only what the video will capture, only what the onlooker will capture. Whereas in the old tradition, the dancing was much more three-dimensional, even multi-dimensional, in that we would move around and different planes and dimensions of the movement. So I feel that because of the element of the presentation, the show, a lot of the dance styles have become very, very influenced by that perspective, by that onlooker perspective, especially from the video perspective, which, of course, is for the purpose of posting online on these social media sites.
So fascinating. Catherine, Ethan's talking about how the presence of social media affects what kind of dance people in the street dance community actually do.
I find that so fascinating, and I can totally picture what he means, this kind of, you're just facing you're facing the front, you're facing the camera. And it reminds me, too, of the way that our vacation photography, and I write about this in the book, weddings themselves, the way that we are holding weddings with the kind of expectation that it's going to be documented, and the way that changes people's behavior at weddings. It really, I think it has transformed a lot of the social experience of celebratory events, because you're kind of interacting with it with the thought of documentation, and also while documenting yourself.
Similarly, a text from Heather in Maplewood, who writes, I recently found some Christmas letters I sent to family and friends in my late 20s, early 30s, which was in the early 2000s. I was so surprised to read how much detail I included and how emotionally vulnerable I presented myself versus how guardedly and carefully I portray myself on social media now. So it definitely changed how I narrate and think of my own life. Another one, I'll note that you have a chapter in the book bluntly titled Lies, the premise being we know everyone on social media might be lying to us at any given moment. And sure enough, we got a text Listener writes, at this point, I just blatantly lie on social media for fun, saying I'm engaged or expecting. Neither is true. I feel like everyone is doing some version of embellishment, so I just treat it like performance art and go full-blown fabrication. I'm sorry that this is making me think of Donald Trump and how a lot of people just sort of accept that, at the political level. But back to social media, there's a little evidence that your chapter called Lies is accurate.
Yeah, I mean, it's just showbiz, right? I really think, maybe not everyone's blatantly lying about how they're engaged, but it is definitely an approach of playing with the format.
Jessica in Brooklyn, you're on WNYC. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, how are you? I wanted to say joyfully that my 20-year-old took a picture last night of us without a phone. And there are tons and tons of 20-year-olds out there that are actively taking a moment to step away from their phone and realizing their phone is a phone and that their photos are photos. So it's really a breath of fresh air. They're doing it without our intervention, but they are really waking up to tech addiction.
But still carrying around, so you're saying in this case, your 20-year-old carries a separate camera, a physical camera.
Yeah, very exciting. Took a picture last night of us and said, I really want to start taking pictures and stop using my phone as everything. So it's very exciting.
Thank you, Jessica. One other person told me that too, about their lives, the camera, the separate camera now, instead of just the phone, even though the quality of phone photos gets better and better all the time. Have you heard that particular one before, Catherine?
Yeah, and it's younger people in general that I've heard it from, that they're really embracing analog photography and even just a digital camera that is not the phone, totally. And I love that because I do think that it invites a different kind of storytelling and it really changes the relationship with an experience. So no, I mean, I love hearing those kinds of stories.
Before we run out of time, you wrote a recent brooding column called Every Teen Should Work in the Service Industry. And coincidentally, this concept came up on yesterday's show when we were talking with the priest and public intellectual, Father James Martin, who talked about his own teen menial service industry jobs that he thought kind of helped set him up spiritually to do, what he was going to do eventually. And I thought of you because I had read your recent column called Every Teen Should Work in the Service Industry. So
that's great.
Is a teenager's first service job, and I said that to him, I mentioned you, is a teenager's first service job in any way an antidote to anything in this book?
That's so interesting. I really hadn't thought of that, but it's true. Like service is all about encounter with strangers and dealing with the kind of unexpected, just other people and all of their needs, and it's very unpredictable. And I do think that it can be an antidote because so much of social media storytelling is about control and about sort of controlling narratives, controlling impressions, and it is a form of hiding for a lot of people, like was mentioned. And when you're working in the service industry, you can't hide. You're on the floor with people, and you have to respond to whatever comes your way, with graciousness ideally. So yeah, that's great. I see that. Yes, I agree.
Just a few more texts relevant to the book because I can't resist as they continue to flood in. Let's see. One person writes about the cameras. One day I was on the train with the kids heading to a Mets game, and we were all wearing Mets gear, and a young woman sitting across from us asked if she could take our picture with a Polaroid camera. We said sure, and she did, and gave us the picture. It was a sweet moment. And, of course, you can't do that with your phone. You can't print out the picture
right.
At the moment on the spot and give it to a stranger. And someone else writes, on the lying, there's a viral video going around right now where this woman supposedly made her own wedding cake and documented the process, but the end result was a completely different cake. LOL.
Yeah, no, there's so many lies. And the lies are tiny and big. I'm more interested in the tiny lies, the almost imperceptible lies, but the big lies are interesting too.
Why are you more interested in the tiny lies?
Well, because I think that everyone is doing it and we're not calling it lies. Even these are lies of omission. They're, just you're shaping a narrative, keeping a lot of your own self out. You're doing it to just adhere to the format. And the end result is not accurate. It doesn't fit the true feeling of your life. And I think that's really common.
Is there a call to action in this book?
My editor really wanted me to put one, and I really tried, because I don't think that the solution is throw your phone in the ocean. I don't think that it's realistic. I do think that we just need to recognize our narratives for what they are, that we're telling stories on social media. That's what we're doing, and it's a noble, beautiful thing to tell stories as a human being, and we've always done that, always. So I think we just need to dignify this act and see it for what it is, and then maybe we will cease to be satisfied with this technology as a storytelling technology. Because to me, it's not adequate to the task of human beings telling their stories.
Catherine Giza Morton's new book is The Story of Your Life, How Social Media Shapes the Way We Experience Everything. Thanks for sharing it with us. Great to talk.
Thanks so much, Brian.